As we go into the second third of this course, a few words of summary may be useful. So far we've looked at Homo sapiens on this globe. They started out in our record about 100,000 years ago in Southwest Africa, and armed with the ability to make tools, the knowledge of fire, and the spoken language, they spread across the globe. Spread from Africa through the Middle East, along the coast of India to Australia. In successive waves they went to India and China, Central Asia, on to Siberia, from Central Asia also into Europe, and then from Siberia across the Bering Strait, when it was a land bridge, into North and South America. By 10,000 years ago, the human species had spread all across the globe, all the way to the southern tip of South America, as well as a number of journeys, sea voyages to islands throughout the Pacific. So they had spread across the globe. About 10,000 years ago, some places in China, some places in the Middle East, they began to settle in villages and convert from hunter-gatherers into farmers. At this point, in settled villages, as farmers, they were able to generate enough food surplus in places where a food surplus was possible for them to specialize. Specialize in making tools, and in some cases specialize in developing a written language. 7,000 years ago in China, the first characters appeared, some of which characters have been in continuous use for 7,000 years and are still in use today. About 5,000 years ago, cuneiform showed up in the Middle East, and then in a variety of hieroglyphic patterns were used in Egypt, were used in Samaria, were used by the Phoenicians, and spread throughout the Mediterranean and Europe. Now these made possible the next great leap forward, a leap forward into the consideration of abstract thought. Not abstract thought that could be handled from one generation to another in spoken words, but abstract thought that could be written and transmitted from one generation to the next and across great distances. What was made of this? Well, in China, a series of advantages were used. The Chinese benefited from geography because they had a fertile temperate climate, protected from other major population areas by the Tibetan Plateau and the Himalaya Mountains, augmented climatically by the Tibetan Plateau because it produced a monsoon phenomenon, and then blessed with a certain grain native to Asia, rice, they were able to produce large quantities of food which made their city, their villages, their towns and their villages grow almost exponentially. Now with this information, they made great progress, but they weren't making it alone. Of course, in the West, there were comparable intellectual developments. The Egyptian civilization, the Hebrew prophets, the Greek philosophers, the Roman lawyers and historians and philosophers who carried forward the Western tradition, which I'll discuss in the next lecture. But in China, the developments that are most notable are the development about the 5th century with the writings of Confucius and the parallel writings of a man or collection of men who go generally by the name Lao Tzu. These ideas were then the key transmitters. Having a written language and being the only people in their neighborhood with a written language, the Chinese thought was transmitted to areas like Korea, to the southern part of China, from Korea across a narrow band of water to Japan, down as far as Vietnam. The Chinese spread their ideas and their civilization throughout this period. The ideas of Confucius were given a strange boost by a man who wasn't Confucian, who was anti-Confucian, named Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor to unify all of China. When he unified all of China, among his accomplishments, the Great Wall, the Grand Canal, a whole host of unification of axle lengths for wagons and uniform systems of measurement, he also insisted on a single written language. This single written language was meant to cover, as it does today, some 200 different oral dialects, and it allowed the transmission of this Confucian culture with modifications and evolutions, with additions from Lao Tzu, to all of China and the surrounding areas. What is this philosophy? In the next segment of this course, we're going to do readings that are available in Blackboard called The Confucian Tradition. Additional readings in Blackboard called Heinz, Chapter 7. These readings are very important for gaining a background, which we will then cover in class using a video on the Confucian tradition. At the conclusion of this segment of the class, I'll be giving you a comparative analysis of Western thought, at least one important strain of Western thought, in comparison with Chinese traditional thought.